pork belly bird, Henry.
I'm here, Hilary. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, mate, and thank you for joining us. For everybody watching, this is the Sizzling Saturday Afterburn. We're joined by Glen of the Ethical Butcher, who's going to tell us a little bit about the butcher, how they exist, regenerative farming, how you work with your farmers, etc. After we've been cooking some of your lovely produce. So perhaps a bit of an introduction. Apologies, my pork has just hit temperature, so I've got to get it off the barbecue. So
okay, you get it off the barbecue, and I'll do a bit of talking then for a minute. So
no worries, thank you.
We're an online business. We're an e-commerce business. We don't have a shop front. We're a website, and we ship fresh chilled meat to the entire UK using DPD. And yeah, so really, the most important part of our business is how we source the meat that we sell. Oh, look at that, Hilary! Look at that. So we source from farmers who are practicing the most ethical regenerative methods that we can find, and this is an ongoing process as we keep finding more people doing, better and better methods. But essentially, all our beef and lamb is 100% pasture raised. There's no grains fed to any grazing animals at all. We produced poultry without soy in the feed. We managed to work with the farmer to remove soy from the feed. But really the important things are the effects that the animals have within the landscape that they're on. So a good example of this is the pork that you're eating there. It comes from a farm in North Yorkshire where the farmer is using the pigs to actually clear ancient woodland. What happens is pigs will root through forest, they'll clear undergrowth, they'll eat brambles, and they'll eat, a large part of the vegetation. And as they do this and as they run through, a lot of the invasive plants are eaten. The native trees can grow, and of course, this accelerated tree growth is removing carbon, and this is part of a natural process. Woodland would have been managed by grazing animals like this, and when we have these kind of areas of woodland without the full ecosystem of the animals within it, then it's out of balance. So all this sort of other stuff grows, and the native trees can end up not doing very well. So that's an example of the pork. The chicken, for example, that we do is a very, very interesting process. We developed soy-free chicken with a beef farmer, and we say soy-free because there's no soy in the chicken's feed. So the chickens are following the cattle through a rotational grazing system. After the cattle have been on a bit of land, there's an increase from their dung, there's an increase in the amount of insects and bugs. The chickens run across that, they're eating the dung beetles, the worms, and the extra bugs. They're trampling their own waste products and the cattle's waste products back into the ground and scratching it up. And when they move along, there's this huge burst of growth from the land, and it's called sequestration because you're sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere with this accelerated plant growth. And it'll be another 60 to 90 days before they come back to that same bit of land. And by the time they do, you've got pasture up to your armpits, and this huge increase in biodiversity that happens. So all of our farmers, they're looking at these methods that they're actively trying to encourage more life to be on the farm. And it's almost like the total opposite of a monocrop system that might be used to grow grains, where the farmers are trying to reduce the amount of other life because they only want one crop to grow. It's like the difference between a reductionistic approach and what we call a holistic approach. Because the greater the diversity, it benefits the whole system. That's not really elevator pitch, but that's a good explanation of what we do.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a little bit interesting. The part of Australia that I come from, west of us, they grow a lot of wheat and rice.
Right.
And it's been a monoculture, if you like, and along the river that I grew up on, the Murray River, where a lot of it irrigated from, it wrecked the land. It brought the salt up from the water table underneath, and a lot of it's not arable anymore. So, it's rotating the crops, and I think the regenerative. Yeah, this is, I think, something we should all be considering, and
I mean, what you've alluded to there is one of the problems is as farms have got bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes increasingly difficult to change what you do. So if you're farming like 500 acres, all your machinery and all your setup will be to produce one crop. So you can't say, okay, well, the soil's getting a bit depleted, let's run cattle and sheep through it for a few years, because it's a whole different system of farming. But of course, this is how we used to do things. We used to have crops on rotation. And in fact, one of the places we buy our land from, the guy's doing an incredible 8-year cycle. So year 1 is barley, year 2 is barley, year 3, I think, is oilseed rape. Then he undersows pasture, then the sheep go on, then the dairy cattle, then 2 years of beef. And by the time it gets round again, the soil fertility is restored. So he's not using any fertilizer when it comes back to growing crops. And the whole thing just rotates. And as it rotates, there's never a time with bare soil, because bare soil is wasted solar energy. If you've got soil hitting the ground, it's wasted energy that could be removing carbon from the air. So, this is the system. But the problem is farms now are big, they're specialized. And when yields go down, they just put more chemicals on, and then you get the yields up. But what happens is you're slowly depleting the soil. And there's no, the only way to put it back, or the best way of putting it back, is to put animals back into the system and manage them correctly. So, we just need a holistic approach to everything we're growing, really.
And how's all of this? I mean, it's regenerative agriculture. To me, it sounds like a new word for perhaps something that they were doing a long time ago before industrialization came along. How's it being promoted or educated? Is it individual farmers? Is there how are more people getting to know about this?
Well, we're as a business, it's what we it's what we do. I mean, we as the ethical butcher, we are pushing this information out quite hard. We're pushing the messaging. I think it's a bit more understood in America than it is here, because there are a couple of actual standards in America that products can be sourced from regenerative agriculture. There's a thing called a leaf mark, and there's a thing called a greener world, which are certifications of things coming from a regenerative system, which we don't really have here. But I think more and more people are starting to become aware that it doesn't matter whether you're farming wheat, whether you're farming soybeans, whether you're farming chickens, pigs, whatever. You can do it in a way that damages the planet, or you can do everything in a way that helps the planet. And this is, this is the whole point. It's like we should be having discussions regardless of, what people eat. We should be having discussions about how can we do it with either minimal impact, lower impact, getting towards sustainable, which means not making things worse, but ideally do it in a way that's making things better. So we're building soil carbon, and we're improving biodiversity, and that's that's the discussions we all need to be having. Okay, and then so then for little old Instagram folk like me and Jack and everybody watching, what can we do to be part of this or promote this or learn more about it? Educate ourselves and push it out there. Well, the most simple thing is ask more questions. Ask more questions and think about what you're eating, where it comes from, and how it was produced. And I would encourage people to shop less from supermarkets and more from their farmers markets. Go to farmers markets, talk to the farmers, talk to the producers, buy seasonal organic vegetables, buy well-reared meats, cook things from scratch so you know what's in it, and just sort of get reconnected with your food, your place within the cycle of food, and how we all fit in. Okay, yeah, no, this is interesting, because it's certainly it's something that I've found through my time on Instagram here is how little people know about where their food comes from. I grew up on a farm till I was about 8 years old, so I'm 10 years old, so I'm sort of familiar with the that end of the food chain, if you like, but it's quite surprising. Not a lot of people have seen a real cow, seen a real sheep, or connect the fact that their piece of chicken came from an animal. Yeah. It's quite surprising. So part of what I want to do and achieve out of my time here is promote that out to people, and then on top of that say, well, look, it is a living being and it's part of an ecosystem. So
You know, buy from the right places, buy from the right people, buy from the places that are doing the right things, that are encouraging it to sustain and stay. So, you know, this is part of the message that I'm trying to get across. And
Absolutely. And we need to respect, you know, we have to accept that we are taking a life, and that we're taking a life to provide nutrition for us, and that all these lives that are taken are circular. You know, it's just as we, you know, we're all borrowed energy, and the animals we eat are borrowed energy, and all of life runs in these circles, and we have to honor the lives that we're taking, which means maybe eat better, much better quality, as good a quality meat, as well reared as you can possibly afford to do. But that might mean, instead of choosing fillet steak every night from, you know, badly farmed animals, choose some, you know, eat some shin and some ossobuco and some slow cooked meat. Eat a bit more nose to tail. You know, just consider a bit more about what you're eating, and how and when. If you cook a chicken, it should do 3 meals for a family of 4, and then you should boil the bones to make a soup afterwards, and extract every last bit of nutrition that you can to fuel your body in a, you know, in a good way of amazing bioavailable nutrients, and honor the life. And that's something we kind of really believe in.
Definitely. And from my point of view, I also believe that taking vegetables, etc., from the ground should be exactly the same. To me, they're a life in a similar way as well. So they need to be all considered too. You know,
absolutely. It's all about considering impact. So everything we eat has an impact, and it's looking at how it. I just want people to be more aware of their impact. You know, I'm not saying to people, don't ever eat a pineapple because it doesn't grow in the UK. That's crazy. But just really consider how, you know, consider the spread of the impact that you're having across all the different things.
Indeed. In earlier you mentioned some other techniques, is the regenerative farming. You mentioned some other techniques or farming types as well.
Yeah, I think I was talking about. I think I maybe mentioned holistic planned grazing, which is a method that a lot of our farmers use. It was developed by a guy called Alan Savory, and he was looking at the impact that large herds of grazing animals had on grasslands like savanna. And if you think about how on the Great Plains of America and Canada, there's some of the deepest topsoil on the planet. In some places, the topsoil is 12 feet deep. And this was built up over thousands of years of grazing animals moving across the plains and having a particular impact on the land. And the key difference between the way that we farm even grass-fed animals now and natural animals then is, first of all, there were no fences. And secondly, the important thing is there were apex predators. So when you had these large groups of, you know, cows, bison, sheep, whatever was running around, they would come together in a huge group for protection from predators, and they would move across the land constantly. So the effect they had on the land was completely different to keeping animals in a field where they're spread out. So what this guy Alan Savory worked out is, like, what happens if we mimic that action? Well, what happens is the animals are on a bit of pasture for a short period of time, but they have a strong impact, and then they move on. And the thing about grasses and the plants that grow is they need to be grazed to live well. So when grass is eaten and pasture is eaten, sunlight can penetrate deeper, and the animals eat the seeds, they trample the seeds in, they eat certain choice parts of the plant, they trample it, they urinate on it, they defecate on it, and all this effect happens, and then they move, and then they leave, because they're constantly moving across the land. What happens behind them is this huge increase in growth and this creation of new topsoil. And we can do that in a field. So if we take a 60-acre field, mob, mow, manure, and move on. That's, as Mr. Low BBQ said, that's exactly it. That's kind of paraphrasing what I'm saying, but it is about putting the cows or the sheep together in a tight spot and moving them every single day, so that it's 60 or 90 days even before they come back to the same bit of land. And when they do, that same bit of land the pasture is kind of going to be up to chest height. It's not just like mowing a bit of grass, and you're going to have this wonderful, diverse mixture of plants and animals that have lived because of the effect you're having. So yeah, really, that's one method where our farmers are doing this. And there's a farm in America called White Oak Pastures, and they've measured a net loss of carbon. So animals, as we all know, they belch methane, they belch methane, and they produce carbon dioxide. But this action on the land creates so much plant growth that it's pulling CO2 from the atmosphere. And as the soil carbon is increasing, it also makes the land more resistant to flooding and drought. It's turning the difference between sand and a sponge, if you like. So, you know, it's able to, as Low BBQ said, water retention. But yeah, this farm in America, White Oak Pastures, they have actually measured that they're taking more carbon out of the atmosphere than the animals are releasing. So, you know, in a real sense, this could actually, combat global warming, climate change, if adopted en masse.
This is something I've seen. I mean, there's a Woody Harrelson Netflix show.
Kiss the Ground.
Yes, yeah, and I've joined their forum now, and speaking to some people there. Perhaps in a coming episode, I'd love to have somebody from there as well. It's they're similar. What they're saying there is that the soil could be used to take the carbon out of the air and really help.
I mean, I'm by no means an expert in all this, but if I can certainly connect you with people who can talk at great length about how all this happens and the effects it has. But that's just one method that comes under the banner of regenerative agriculture. And when we're having this conversation, it's super important to remember that regenerative agriculture is not just limited to animal agriculture. I mean, there are regenerative methods that farmers can use for growing crops. And one of the most important parts of that, for example, is to not plow, but to drill the seeds in for next year's crop. Because plowing is an incredibly destructive process that releases a lot of carbon. When you plow a field to plant it, you're just destroying all the root structure from last year's crop, and you're releasing carbon. You're killing a lot of animals as you do it. I mean, it's devastating. But a lot of farmers now are using these drill techniques to put the seeds in. They're harvesting the plants, so letting the rest, turn into carbon matter back into the soil. They're planting strips to encourage pollinators. There are all kinds of agroforestry systems where you're planting trees with crops underneath it that can be grazed, or there's a lot. It's a bigger subject than just how we keep cows.
Okay, so this is all fascinating, and I'm really proud to be talking to you about it, and I'm really honoured that you're taking the time. And,
no, thank you for giving me the platform. I can talk about this stuff all day. I love it.
Well, I'm just thinking, for the people out there, well, myself as well, but where's some good places to read more and learn more? Where can we go and understand a little bit more about all of this, and perhaps even join in if there's
well, there's a great, if you want to, the guy who I mentioned earlier, Alan Savory, he's got quite a huge organization, a global organization now. So if you look at savory.global, there's a whole bunch of information there. I think there's a website called regenerativeagriculture.com, and that gives you sort of definitions of what regenerative agriculture is. But also on our website, ethicalbutcher.co.uk, we're starting to kind of, someone said Hillary's clearly interested in, she hasn't touched his wine yet. that's how I know I've got your attention. There's some amazing winemakers doing regenerative methods as well. One in particular, a British winemaker called The Uncommon, who make incredible English champagnes using regenerative methods. They're a huge fan of what they do. Anyway, sorry. There's quite a lot of information on our website, and we're building out this to be a directory. So as you mentioned earlier, we started a campaign called Regenuary, and it was really it was a campaign looking at what would happen instead of or as well as if someone's going vegan for a month, they might instead just want to look at where they're sourcing all their foods from, whether they're going vegan or whether they're omnivore. but just to try and look at sourcing as many foods as they possibly can from regenerative agriculture. So we kind of coined this term Regenuary, and it's sort of turned into a bit of a movement. It created a bit of fuss. A lot of people in the vegan community thought that we were slagging off veganism because we're a meat business, and that really wasn't the intention. The intention was just to say, simply being vegan doesn't mean you're having a lower impact, because you can eat vegan foods that come from, you know, shitty, highly processed sources from monocrop agriculture that have been quite damaging to the planet. And you can eat meat from, you know, you can eat meat from bad or good. You can eat vegan sources from, you know, badly or well produced. It's about thinking about where everything comes from. And as omnivores, of course, we are eating plants and animals, you know, not just one or the other. So that's sort of where the campaign started. And it's now turned into, we've put a tab on our website called Regenuary. And I'm slowly building out information there so people can source not just, you know, meat products, but also grains, vegetables, all kinds of things. And as the year goes on, I want to just keep connecting with producers who are doing things who are doing things in a very low impact way, and have a place where people can come and look at the best sourced foods that they can possibly find.
Okay, great. Well, all the best with it, mate. You know, I'd like to think that we can help and direct people your way, you know, in order to move on and find some resources and find some more information. And, you know, I'm happy to help out in any way, mate.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely keep in touch. And if you really want to dig deeper into some of the aspects of regenerative farming that we've touched on, then I'll connect you with some people who know an awful lot more about it than I do. Okay.
All right. Well, I think that's a wonderful introduction to what you do and what the ethos behind your business there. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you joining us. I appreciate the wonderful food that you sent us as well. And
well, I hope you enjoy it, and you've done it proud. I mean, I wish I could smell it from here. But we're probably only about 4 or 5 miles apart, but I think it's just too far for the.
Well, I'll just show you a couple of little examples that have come out already. So I just made a little bit of crackling there in the barbecue. And then the pork has come out as well now. So let me just quickly. Oh.
Look at that. Absolutely done it proud.
And at Rob's barbecue, that's going to go really well with a little splash of wine later.
Tell me about the wine. What are you pairing it with?
It's a Sardine. It's a Portuguese wine. Alfama district. So the supplier of the wine, they do all of our pairings for us. So we provide them a list beforehand. I'm not a particular wine expert. I'm more.
That's true. I was going to low barbecue. Saying, yeah, I do love wine, and I think I would have paired that with a Burgundy. But I'll be interested to see what you think.
Okay, definitely. So, I'm really looking forward to enjoying this with a little splash later. I've got the pork belly burned ends again here. I've got one left.
Oh, it's torturing me.
with the kimchi, that kimchi is delicious. It's got a really
that's fabulous. That's made in London, organic kimchi from suppliers that just got in touch. It was bizarre timing. I wanted to put some fermented foods in the wellness box, and pretty much the same day that I was starting to think, who can we get it from? I got an email out of the blue from these guys, Yumchi Kimchi, saying, you know, we like what you guys do. Do you want to partner up? And I'm like, that was just too weird. We'll do it. So I love this stuff as well. I've got some in my fridge, and I'm going to be getting into it tonight.
Excellent. Well done, mate. And from Jack and I and Sizzling Saturday, we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor to be on your show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you very much. We'll catch you soon.
Catch you soon. Bye.
Thanks, mate.